Napoleon III, last emperor of the French.
Louis Napoleon Bonaparte, the nephew of the legendary Napoleon I. In the shadows of a vanished empire, his childhood was shaped by exile, ambition, and a constant yearning to reclaim a legacy. As Europe reeled from revolutions, he grew up studying political philosophy and military tactics, convinced that his destiny was intertwined with France's return to greatness. The Bonapartist name still echoed across the continent, and young Louis Napoleon carried it like a torch in the dark. Twice he tried and failed to seize power, once in 1836 and again in 1840, both attempts ending in arrest and humiliation. Yet the failed coup in Bologna only fueled his determination. Imprisoned in the fortress of Ham, he used his time to write and cultivate public sympathy. He styled himself as a man of the people, misunderstood by the elites, and began to reshape his image as a modern reformer rather than a nostalgic imperialist. Then came 1848. Revolution swept through France once more, toppling the monarchy and birthing the Second Republic. Louis Napoleon, now a man of timing and calculation, seized the moment. He ran for president with a campaign built on hope, order, and the romantic pull of his name. To the shock of many, he won in a landslide, becoming president of France, not by blood or violence, but by vote. But power once tasted rarely remained still. As his term neared its end and the Constitution barred re-election, he moved swiftly. In December 1851, with the backing of the military, he staged a coup d'état. Parliament was dissolved, opposition silenced, and the Republic swept aside. A year later, he crowned himself Emperor Napoleon III, reviving the empire under a new name and a new vision. As emperor, he launched one of the most ambitious modernization projects France had ever seen. He redesigned Paris with wide boulevards, sewer systems, and iconic architecture that still define the city today. Railways and industry flourished. Napoleon III was hailed as the architect of progress, blending imperial authority with economic advancement. Yet behind this facade was strict control, censorship, surveillance, and the ever-present pressure of maintaining power. Abroad, he tried to assert France's global influence. He joined Britain in the Crimean War against Russia, earning military success. But his intervention in Mexico was a disaster. His attempt to install Maximilian of Austria as emperor backfired when Mexican revolutionaries captured and executed him. This imperial overreach embarrassed France and marked a turning point in his foreign credibility. Domestically, liberal voices began to rise. Napoleon III, sensing the change, loosened press restrictions and allowed broader elections. But this came too late to reverse growing dissent. Intellectuals like Victor Hugo became fierce critics. The once unquestioned emperor now faced an increasingly vocal republic. The dream of a stable second empire began to crack under pressure. Then came the fatal miscalculation: war with Prussia. Otto von Bismarck, the cunning Prussian statesman, baited Napoleon III into declaring war through the manipulated Ems dispatch. France was ill-prepared. At the Battle of Sedan in 1870, the French army was decimated, and Napoleon III was captured. The emperor had fallen, not on a battlefield of glory, but in a humiliating defeat that echoed through Europe. With his capture, the Second Empire collapsed overnight. The Third Republic was proclaimed in Paris. France plunged into chaos, enduring the siege of Paris and the rise of the Paris Commune. Napoleon III was sent into exile in England, where he watched from afar as the empire he had built crumbled into history. He died in 1873. Quietly and largely forgotten, Yet his story was never simple. Napoleon III was a dreamer, a strategist, a builder, and a ruler caught between legacy and ambition. His reign brought both prosperity and pain, progress and collapse. He was the last emperor of the French, a symbol of 19th century Europe's grandest hopes and deepest tragedies. After his capture at Sedan, Napoleon III was transported to Germany under armed guard. The man who once ruled over millions now sat in a foreign land, stripped of his empire and title. Though treated with a degree of respect by the Prussians, the psychological blow was immense. He had misjudged Bismarck, underestimated Prussia's strength, and gambled France's future on outdated notions of glory. His silence in captivity was a reflection of a man crushed by the weight of consequence. As word of his defeat spread, Paris exploded with unrest. The Second Empire's fall created a vacuum quickly filled by Republican fervor. A new provisional government declared the birth of the Third Republic. Crowds tore down imperial insignia, while newspapers mocked the emperor's downfall. To many Parisians, Napoleon III had betrayed the very ideals of the revolution he once claimed to honor. In exile in Chislehurst, England, Napoleon III tried to maintain some dignity. Living with his wife Eugenie and son Louis Napoleon, he received loyal supporters, wrote political essays, and kept his hopes alive for a Bonapartist restoration. Yet the world had changed. France moved on, and the emperor, once so commanding, had become a relic of a failed vision. Though politically isolated, Napoleon III remained a subject of curiosity and controversy. British society observed him with a mix of fascination and pity. Some admired his past reforms, others saw him as the architect of France's humiliation. In private, he suffered from chronic illness, kidney stones, that brought him immense pain and gradually eroded his health. Even as his body failed, he still dreamed of France. He hoped his son would someday reclaim the throne and restore Bonapartist honor. Eugenie shared this hope and fiercely guarded his son's image. But in truth, the dynasty's flame was flickering. Monarchies across Europe were crumbling, and democracy, though turbulent, was taking deeper root. On January 9, 1873, Napoleon III passed away quietly in England. His funeral was modest, but attended by former allies and scattered supporters. His death was not marked by grandeur, but by quiet reflection. Eugenie wept beside his coffin, holding the weight of once glorious empire, now reduced to silence. After his death, the Bonapartist cause slowly faded. His only son, the Prince Imperial, died fighting in the Anglo-Zulu War in South Africa, cut down at just 23. With him ended the last serious hope for a Bonapartist restoration. Napoleon III's dream, built on legacy and ambition, had finally reached its twilight. Yet Napoleon III left behind a mixed legacy. He had modernized France, built infrastructure that transformed cities, and promoted early social reforms. His vision of progress shaped future French governance. But his lust for imperial power and catastrophic military decisions led to France's most humiliating defeat in a century. Today, historians debate his place in history. Was he a tyrant or a reformer, a modernizer or a misguided imperialist? The truth perhaps lies in between. He embodied the contradictions of 19th century Europe, torn between monarchy and democracy, tradition and progress, nationalism and global ambition. And so, the legacy of Napoleon III endures, not in glory or defeat alone, but in the transformation of France itself. He was a man haunted by a name, driven by destiny, and undone by ambition. The last emperor of the French, whose rise and fall mirror the hopes and failures of a century at the crossroads.